Quem está familiarizado com algumas oposições controladas bem conhecidas ao redor do mundo, inclusive aqui no Brasil, pode ter se deparado com um jornalista, ou melhor, tá? Ex-jornalista, porque é a propaganda que o sistema faz para você, chamado Tucker Carlson. Ele é ex-funcionário da Fox News. Ex-funcionário? Tem certeza? Bem, se você fazer uma breve pesquisa, diz que ele é um jornalista conservador de extrema direita que está aí para criar um novo jornal digital para bater de frente com qualquer jornal que faça politicagem. É aquilo que eu já disse em uma live e já disse em alguns vídeos, que é uma estratégia de uma oposição controlada. Eles usam de algo verdadeiro para aquilo que você não tem voz, ou coragem, ou nem tempo, infelizmente, para bater de frente, para colocar a cara a tapa, por exemplo. Quer ver uma coisa? Ele, pelo menos enquanto estava lá engravatado e ainda com o cash, recebendo dinheiro da mídia, do jeito que está, a mídia maldita, ele falou sobre as eleições aqui no Brasil. E dizendo que tinha que contar os votos. Como assim 2% de diferença? Tudo bem questionar. Não estou dizendo que é certo ou errado, mas sim que é o que muitos brasileiros querem falar, e quando eles acham alguém, seja de fora do Brasil ou não, que fale aquilo que eles querem tanto e está preso na garganta, eles aplaudem essa pessoa e falam: poxa, agora é digno da minha confiança eu continuar ouvindo esse cara. Então é daí que ele consegue a sua atenção, a sua confiabilidade nele, e a partir daí, já que ele é mais um peão do sistema, ele te engana, ele te induz ao erro e você continua seguindo. Pronto, o sistema ainda controla você, o que a sua cabeça pensa como narrativa alternativa. Pois bem, Tucker Carlson é uma oposição controlada. Ele é mais um daqueles que fingem antagonismo à esquerda, por exemplo, mas como sabemos, faz parte da dialética hegeliana. Começando este documentário com essa introdução um pouco longa, pelo menos para mim, você vai ver uma dos documentários que ele está produzindo, e olha aqui um documentário contra ele, sobre a China. A China está querendo comprar o Brasil. Então é claro que ele vai chamar os políticos que concordam com o que ele vai dizer, porque além disso tem que propagar, tem que se não deixar cair a peteca da dialética hegeliana, falsa esquerda e direita, porque não existe isso. Então ele tem que difundir isso cada vez mais, essa rivalidade, porque é assim que o povo mais conquistado é um povo dividido, como diria a famosa frase que você já conhece. Então você vai ver um trailer de um dos documentários, pelo menos que leva o seu nome, então ele é responsável por isso, sobre a China está comprando o Brasil. Nicolas, mas eu estou vendo a maioria das coisas que estão vendendo lá no centro aqui da minha cidade não é muito mais coisa original. Você vai pesquisar, está na mão de chineses. Sim, e já há muito tempo. Só que eles têm que arranjar algum país, sem dizer quem são os donos dos países, para abater. Eles não vão na raiz do problema. Eles também não podem, porque são seus patrões. É a mesma coisa dizer que a China fabricou a Covid, mas não se diz quem usou a Covid a seu favor. É um espantalho que eles criam É um espantalho que o sistema levantou para eles baterem, e as pessoas que apoiam e que admiram tais pessoas falam: está certo, esse é o problema, a China, e não todos os países, inclusive o Brasil e esses peões que estão a favor da maldita nova ordem mundial, a dita esquerda, que não existe, mas para que você entenda, é abertamente a favor dos objetivos da agenda global Illuminati, satânica e maligna e maldita, da maldita nova ordem mundial que vai se findar junto com o anticristo. E a direita, que o Tucker Carlson faz parte, finge um antagonismo a essa esquerda maligna e maldosa. Mas também, esse da direita é também um mentiroso. Ele finge ser um bonzinho para você confiar nele e se ferrar no final. Então, dada essa introdução de quem é Tucker Carlson, pelo menos arranhando na superfície, você vai acompanhar alguns vídeos, ou pelo menos esse trailer, e depois, se for do agrado meu, eu vou parando para comentar, e você já sabe como funciona aqui o documentário.
Good afternoon. I'm very pleased to come here to the National Congress of Brazil and meet all the friends. On behalf of the Chinese government and people, the cordial greetings and best wishes to the hospitable and friendly Brazilian people and to all the people in Latin America and the Caribbean.
Brazil deserves a lot more attention than it typically gets in Western discourse.
We're worried about what's happening all over the world, except in our own backyard.
China-Brazil relations and China-Latin America relations keep moving forward like the Yangtze River and the Amazon River.
It's really striking the amount of control that China already has.
A China não está comprando no Brasil, ela está comprando o Brasil.
They know what they want from Brazil. They know how Brazil can play a role in their rise.
We're being leveraged, we're being encircled. We're going to wake up one day and we're going to be very, very surprised and very upset. And the people are going to ask, how did this happen? And the answer is, we let it happen.
Como eu disse no começo, é bom lembrar, antes de você ver este vídeo curto, e o meu comentário vai ser curto também, é só dando uma palhinha do que eu já disse, é para que você esteja na mente que ele é uma oposição controlada. Estou reunindo as provas aqui para você. Imagine que você é oprimido pelo seu esposo, você sendo uma mulher, ou se coloque no lugar de uma mulher. Se você é um homem, se coloque no lugar da sua mãe. Você gostaria de ver o seu pai, o padrasto que seja, um companheiro dela, sendo oprimida, sendo agredida, ou não agredida fisicamente, mas verbalmente, com assédio moral e tudo o que se pode fazer de ruim contra um ser humano, ainda mais com uma mulher? Obviamente, se você tem caráter, você vai me dizer que não. Agora, se essa mulher oprimida pelo homem acha algum grupo que fale contra aquele machismo, aquelas agressões, aqueles assédios, aquelas opressão contra a mulher, e mostra para ela algo que ela nunca viu ou que ela teve uma ideia de que existia, ela vai entrar de cabeça nesse grupo. Ela vai fazer parte desse grupo e acaba sendo apanhada para o rebanho de gados das feministas, que está fundamentado no satanismo, mas nunca que elas vão dizer isso para as mulheres que estão chegando vítimas de violência. Elas não vão dizer que aquelas que defenderam muitas coisas tenebrosas ao longo dos tempos, uma delas era pedófila. Não, elas não dirão isso. Então a mesma coisa ocorre com a oposição controlada. Ex-jornalista, posso dizer ex, ele nunca deixou de ser um peão jornalista para te enganar. Tucker Carlson agora fala aquilo que o povo desconfia, mas não pode falar, porque existe os comandados pela maçonaria chamado STF aqui no Brasil, e não tem tempo, não sabe como criar um canal ou tem medo de colocar a cara na internet. Então, um jornalista bem renomado, ele pode falar e ele é digno de confiança, mas é o primeiro passo. Conquiste a sua confiança e depois te derruba. Tucker Carlson vai questionar as eleições no Brasil.
So the same administration that is constantly yammering on about the sanctity of democracy and free and fair elections has in fact been meddling in the elections of other countries, in this case specifically the elections of Brazil, for more than a year. We're not speculating about this. Biden's CIA director personally pressured Jair Bolsonaro's office, that'd be the former president, or still technically the president of Brazil, pressured Bolsonaro to accept the results of the election long before the election took place. Think about that for a minute. You have no obligation to accept the results of an unfair election. In fact, if you believe in democracy, you shouldn't. But no one in Brazil is allowed to complain about it because big tech companies, which have been effectively arms of the Biden administration for 2 years, are censoring anyone who questions the election. So their candidate, Lula da Silva, supposedly won, and you're not allowed to suggest otherwise, period, or air your supposedly guaranteed right to ask about your country. A judge has also ordered that social media companies remove any posts that question the election results. So this is massive suppression, and despite it, or probably because of it, physical protests are breaking out across Brazil. Matt Tierman is an investigative journalist. He joins us to assess what exactly is going on here. Matt, thank you so much for joining us tonight. So the Biden administration is admitting they had the CIA director try to bully the president of a sovereign country on the question of his own elections? How can that happen?
Well, they don't even think it's a big deal. It's par for the course. In fact, Bernie Sanders was talking about it on Pod Save America, the lefty podcast of former Obama administration alum. And it was like, okay, this is great. This is what we should be doing. We need to secure, quote unquote, democracy our way. Now, Bernie Sanders was somebody who was rallying for decades against the CIA involvement in Latin America in the 70s. But everything's about politics for these people. And in addition to the CIA director, now they're talking about sending Jake Sullivan down there, the national security advisor, to make sure the transition is orderly. But the bigger deal, I think, is that they have had a see no evil, hear no evil mentality for the last 2 years as Bolsonaro followers, politicians aligned with him, journalists have been censored, imprisoned. I wrote a piece for CDM Press, Todd Wood, who I know you know, and I listed some of these incarcerated journalists. Even a sitting politician, a sitting congressman, was placed under house arrest, and it's continuing right now. Carla Zambelli, an outspoken member of the lower house, the Chamber of Deputies, has been totally purged from social media by diktat of one man, the head of the Brazilian Supreme Court, who also oversees a subsidiary court, the Brazilian Electoral Court. There's no due process here. It is purely by diktat, and these people are losing their voices, and the Biden administration says nothing. Where is that not considered an irregularity electorally? Where's the Organization of American States, the EU, the State Department, the IRI, who monitors elections? They're silent. It's pretty obscene.
If you don't have free speech, you don't have democracy. Free speech is a prerequisite for democracy. So when you shut down free speech, it's not a democracy by definition. And I wish, if you're not following the Bill of Rights, it's not a democracy. So period. Anyway, Matt Tierman, I appreciate your reporting on this very much.
Esse vídeo a seguir tem quase 10 minutos. Eu não sei se eu vou ter estômago para colocar tudo ele, mas você pode encontrar facilmente pelo YouTube por aqueles facilmente emocionados, os carentes de alguém que fale por eles, aos montes aqui na internet, principalmente aqui no YouTube por enquanto. Agora, Tucker Carlson vai falar que precisa de uma investigação para algo que aconteceu lá nos Estados Unidos, que, como eu disse e vou repetir, o Brasil é uma cópia barata dos Estados Unidos da América, que é o novo mundo. Por isso que nosso hino nacional está escrito: iluminado, iluminado ao sol do novo mundo, ao sol deles. Está iluminado, mas não é o próprio sol. É uma cópia, é uma projeção ruim, barata, nojenta, igual os Estados Unidos. Quando você procura por esse vídeo, nos comentários, na descrição e até mesmo por grupos mentirosos, misticistas, gnósticos, satanistas, noveristas, oposições controladas aqui no Telegram, que em breve, se é que já não saiu para você um vídeo sobre esses safados do Telegram querendo te enganar mais uma vez, colocam desta forma que eu vou ler agora. Já o nosso 8 de janeiro precisa de uma CPI justamente para enterrar o caso. Nenhum jornalista BR parece disposto a fazer um trabalho mínimo como este do Tucker Carlson. Ou seja, o Tucker Carlson é um cara extremamente competente, um cara extremamente digno de confiança. Parabéns pelo trabalho dele, viu? Nossa.
The real crime, they will tell you again and again, is not what happened on Election Day 2020. The real crime is what happened 2 months later on January 6th, when Donald Trump led an insurrection against the duly elected American government. To prove that claim and to divert attention from the details of the presidential election itself, Democrats in Congress impaneled what they called the House Select Committee on the January 6th attack. The point of that committee was to prevent Donald Trump from running for president again. In December of last year, committee members voted unanimously to refer Trump to the Department of Justice for criminal prosecution. Mission accomplished. But what the committee did not do was explain what happened inside the Capitol on January 6th. 3 weeks ago, thanks to the new Republican Speaker's office, we gained access to thousands of hours of surveillance video that help answer that question. The January 6th committee had access to this very same tape and watched much of it. But as we're about to show you, committee members lied about what they saw and then hid the evidence from the public as well as from January 6th criminal defendants and their lawyers. That is unforgivable. Whatever you think of Speaker Kevin McCarthy, he rectified that crime, and we are grateful that he did. Before we show you the tape, a few words on the process. Our producers had unfettered access to the Capitol surveillance video. Neither the Speaker's office nor our bosses at Fox News interfered in any way with our investigation. Of the 40,000 or so hours of tape, most of it turned out to be irrelevant, static shots of empty rooms, in some cases far from the Capitol itself. To find relevant videotape, our producers were given use of Capitol computers with advanced mapping software. That made it easy to find what we were looking for. What we didn't have was access to facial recognition software, and that was significant. For more than 2 years, we have wondered why some in the crowd that day who seemed to be inciting violence were never indicted for it. We assumed these were federal agents of some sort. We still assume that. And in fact, there were many examples of behavior we saw in those tapes that didn't seem to make sense. Men in civilian clothes holding doors open for protesters, escorting others through the Capitol, etc. We would love to know who these people were. But as of tonight, we don't know. And because we don't know, we're not going to put their faces on the screen and suggest they were federal agents. That would be irresponsible. So there were many mysteries we could not solve. And one more thing. Virtually no one in Washington, Republican or Democrat, certainly not in the news media, wanted to see this tape released tonight. That's why it's remained hidden for more than 2 years. In recent weeks, the usual hyenas in Congress and on cable news have been howling about we are putting lives at risk by showing this tape to the public. Given that these are the very same people who support open borders and defunding the police, it is hard to take their complaints seriously. But we do take security seriously. So before airing any of this video, we checked first with the Capitol Police. We're happy to say their reservations were minor, and for the most part, they were reasonable. In the end, the only change that we made was in blurring the details of a single interior door in the Capitol building. You're unlikely even to notice it when we show you, and we are confident it does not affect our reporting. With that, here's the video. It doesn't answer every question from January 6th, far from it. But it does prove beyond doubt that Democrats in Congress, assisted by Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, lied about what happened that day. They are liars. That is conclusive. And that fact should prevent them from ever being taken seriously again. We're going to begin tonight with footage that shows you what was actually happening inside the Capitol. The footage does not show an insurrection or a riot in progress. Instead, it shows police escorting protesters through the building, including the now infamous QAnon shaman. Watch.
You're about the most unordinary person I know. You're an elitist. You're an asshole.
No. But see, I'm an out of the closet elitist. I don't run around pretending to be a man of the people. I'm absolutely not a man of the people at all.
How do you pay your bills?
Well, I'm like extraordinarily loaded just from like money I, inherited.
You're a trust fund baby, are you not?
No, completely. I've never needed to work. I mean, it's all just the whole cable news thing. It was like a phase I was going through.
Video, I will document the many connections Tucker Carlson has to the CIA and other groups. The reason I'm doing this is because right now he is leading a major part of America off a cliff with his false conservative platform. He rages about the elite and how America seems to be going down the drain when he himself couldn't be more connected to these same elites helping to do it. He is a total shill, a puppet being used to distribute propaganda. What people need to realize is the left and right paradigm we are given is entirely false. Whether you watch CNN or Fox, you are getting CIA agents highly trained in propaganda, usually coming from wealthy families. Take Anderson Cooper, for example. He admittedly interned at the CIA and was born into the Vanderbilt family. He could be called the face of CNN, just as Tucker is the face of Fox. Follow me as I take you through his career and document his highly suspect rise in journalism. Don't forget to take notes and research these things yourself. Tucker Carlson was born on May 16, 1969, in San Francisco, California. When he was 6 years old, his father Richard divorced his mother Lisa and married Patricia Swanson, one of the heiresses to Swanson Enterprises, most notable for their TV dinners. Carlson attended many boarding schools during his youth, including locations in Switzerland and Rhode Island. He graduated from Trinity College in Connecticut in 1991, which is known as one of the Little Ivies, which are a group of private schools which compete with Ivy League schools. Supposedly, Tucker attempted to join the CIA when he graduated, but his application was denied. I can't find an explanation as to why he wanted to be in the CIA or why they rejected him. His father was a very well-connected man in the media industry and encouraged him to pursue journalism because, quote, they'll take anybody. His father, Richard, started his career in journalism at the young age of 22. He had jobs as a copy boy at the Los Angeles Times, as well as a reporter for United Press International, which at the time was one of the largest newswire services in the world. He worked for a few TV stations in Los Angeles and San Diego before joining San Diego Federal Savings and Loan in 1977. The bank was headed by Gordon Luce, who was the former public affairs director for Reagan. Richard became vice president of finance within 3 years, and during this time the bank had a lot of political controversies due to their connections to current and former members of the Reagan administration. In 1983, he decided to get into politics, and in 1984 ran for mayor of San Diego. He lost to his opponent Roger Hedgecock, who was later forced from office in 1985 after it was revealed he received over $350,000 illegally during his campaign. Coincidentally, he would also go on to become a conservative radio host. In 1986, using his connections to the White House, Reagan personally announced his intention to nominate Richard as Associate Director of the United States Information Agency. He became Director of Voice of America, which was a propaganda broadcasting division of USIA. He served as their longest-running director. Voice of America started in 1941 when President Roosevelt established the Foreign Broadcast Information Service as a program directed by the Office of Strategic Services, which became the CIA. The intention stated publicly was to communicate America's views abroad, but it was really an outfit to disseminate propaganda. The first few broadcasts for Voice of America were done over British Broadcasting Corporation transmitters, but expanded rapidly and fell under control of the Office of War Information in 1942. The Office of War Information was tasked with creating and distributing propaganda domestically and internationally. They did this through various means such as broadcasts, newspapers, posters, films, and other media. The agency was terminated by President Truman in 1945, and their offices were transferred to the State Department, and most of the responsibilities were transferred to the CIA. It should also be noted that a Voice of America relay station in Thailand was used as a CIA black site referred to as Cat's Eye or Detention Site Green. These overlaps and connections between Voice of America and the CIA should not be glossed over. In 1991, Richard Carlson was personally nominated by President George H.W. Bush to be the U.S. ambassador to the Seychelles, a nation of islands off the eastern coast of Africa. In 1997, he became CEO of King World Public Television, which was later purchased by CBS in 1999 for $2.5 billion. He became the vice chairman of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, which is an organization that is part of the Israel lobby in the United States. It was founded by Clifford May, who was also a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, the Project for the New American Century, and vice chairman of the Republican Jewish Coalition. Now, you're starting to see that it was no mistake Tucker wanted to join the CIA and become a journalist, like father, like son. Tucker Carlson got his start in journalism when he was hired as a fact-checker for Policy Review. This was a publication put out by the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation was founded in 1973 by three men: Paul Weyrich, a political activist and commentator; Edwin Fuellner, an academic who attended London School of Economics, which is a Rothschild-controlled school, and who was also advisor to different government agencies and domestic policy consultant to Reagan; and last but not least, Joseph Coors of the Coors Brewing family. In 1975, Congress investigated the activities of the Korean Central Intelligence Agency in the U.S. Mr. Fuellner had met with the KCIA station chief, Kim Young-hwan, and in the early 90s, the Heritage Foundation started receiving donations from the KCIA. It should also be noted that in 2005, Mr. Fuellner was appointed to a task force on UN reform, which included such people as former CIA Director James Woolsey, with the goal of achieving a more effective United Nations. The task force was also supported by the Council on Foreign Relations. In 1977, Paul Weyrich hired a man named Roger Pearson to write for Policy Review. In 1986, an intelligence agency watchdog publication called the Covert Action Quarterly documented Pearson's connections to James Jesus Angleton, who was the former chief of CIA counterintelligence, as well as Daniel Graham, former director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. The Heritage Foundation was largely funded by Joseph Coors through his family wealth, but it also received funding from Chase Manhattan Bank, Pfizer, Dow Chemical, Sears, General Motors, Amoco, and Mobil. David Rockefeller was CEO and chairman of Chase Manhattan Bank at the time. It should also be noted that David's grandfather, John D. Rockefeller, who started the Standard Oil Company, had to break it up due to antitrust laws, and Amoco, as well as Mobil, were once part of the company. John D. Rockefeller also donated the 16 acres of land upon which the United Nations headquarters sits in New York. In David Rockefeller's own memoirs, he is quoted as saying, "Some even believe we, the Rockefeller family, are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists, and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty, and I am proud of it." He also funded and was chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations. A quick little fun fact: before the homosexual political commentator David Brock, founder of Media Matters for America, a leftist propaganda outlet which received funding from George Soros and given office space by alleged pedophile and human trafficker John Podesta, he was on the board of the Heritage Foundation. He supported Hillary Clinton for president twice and dated James Alefantis, who has been accused of being a pedophile and human trafficker. He is also a friend of Lynn Rothschild. Lynn Rothschild supposedly abhors Trump and fawns over Clinton publicly, yet her and Trump go way back as well. Also, here's a photo of Trump laughing it up with Happy Rockefeller, wife of former Vice President and New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller. It's a great example to show you that these people are all liars and actors. They will fill whatever role they need to fill when they need to fill it. Sometimes that involves swinging to the total opposite side of the false paradigm politically if it's advantageous to the agenda of the elite. Pick your central banking puppet, left or right. It's all controlled, and these people are shameless whores. When Tucker Carlson left his job at Policy Review, he went to work for the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette under the tutelage of editor Paul Greenberg. Mr. Greenberg was very well connected, having his pieces published across 1,400 different newspapers within the Tribune Content Agency syndicate at the time. He also won a Pulitzer Prize in 1969 and appeared on major television networks as a political commentator on talk shows such as Charlie Rose. Now, I can't actually prove that Mr. Greenberg was CIA, but when I started to look at a few publications he put out, it made me start to wonder. In one article entitled How to Break the CIA, published on JewishWorldReview.com September 2, 2009, he defends the CIA from what he believes to be unfair persecution. He defends the torture of possibly innocent people as justified in the, quote, War on Terror. When referring to the torture of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, he says, "Are we supposed to be sorry about that and proceed to punish those who uncovered these plans? On what theory? That no good deed for your country should go unpunished?" He also boo-hoos about the morale of the CIA and how investigations might increase their agents' anxiety. In another article by Mr. Greenberg entitled Hooray for Snooping, published in the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette October 23, 2013, he talks about a national conference of editorial writers he attended in Calgary, Alberta in the 70s or 80s. In the article he says that, quote, "That year at Calgary, one solemn resolution proposed that we stop talking to the CIA, since a number of journalists abroad had been assassinated on the pretext that we were all CIA agents, capitalist spies, tools of imperialism, and, well, you know the rest. As if the killers were so lacking in imagination, they couldn't come up with some other excuse to do away with us if they hadn't invented this one. So there we were, an all too solemn convention assembled, First Amendment or no, debating whether we should gag ourselves. I dissented, being an American, and unaccustomed to being told whom I could talk to or not talk to. Memory grows furtive, but I believe the resolution was defeated. That it was ever considered was disgraceful enough. It occurs to some of us that, if the CIA and FBI and NSA had been allowed to talk even to each other before September 11, 2001, that date might not have become another one that will live in infamy. If only big data could have been mined back then the way it is now, the country might have been a lot safer, along with the thousands of innocent victims who found themselves in the Twin Towers that fateful day, and others rushing to their rescue as firefighters and cops, and the troops who were stationed at the Pentagon as airliners were turned into flaming engines of destruction, their passengers and crews wiped out, including those who, like the ones aboard Valiant Flight United 93, were the first to mount a counterattack against the terrorists in the still continuing war. It would seem Mr. Greenberg, a very well-connected columnist, was very sympathetic to the ambitions of the CIA for seemingly no reason. It should also be noted he was Jewish and a Zionist. When Tucker left the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, he went to work for the Weekly Standard News magazine in 1995. It was founded by William Kristol and Fred Barnes. William Kristol is Jewish and the son of Irving Kristol, who's been described as, quote, the godfather of neoconservatism. Irving Kristol was also a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and worked for the Congress for Cultural Freedom. The Congress for Cultural Freedom was a group started by a Jewish CIA agent named Mikhail Jocelyn in 1950. It distributed anti-communist propaganda in 35 countries and published over 20 magazines. In 1966, the New York Times ran a series of articles exposing it as a front for the CIA to transfer money to the State Department and the United States Information Agency, the same agency which broadcasted Voice of America, which Tucker's dad was the director of. In the book Thinks, How the CIA Tricked the World's Best Writers, author Joel Whitney talks about, quote, how the good versus bad CIA is a false divide, and that the cultural cold warriors again and again used anti-communism as a lever to spy relentlessly on leftists, and indeed writers of all political inclinations, and thereby pushed U.S. democracy a little closer to the Soviet model of the surveillance state. He alleges that Kristol was in fact a CIA employee. The man who referred to Irving as the godfather of neoconservatism was a man named Jonah Greenberg, also Jewish and editor-in-chief of the National Review, a semi-monthly magazine. The magazine was founded by William F. Buckley, Jr. and has played a significant role in the development of conservatism in the United States. Like Crystal, Buckley was also outed as a CIA employee in Joel Whitney's book. It should also be noted that Fred Barnes, co-founder of the Weekly Standard, currently moderates a show on Voice of America called Issues in the News. Again, the same program Tucker's father, Richard, was director of. It would seem William Crystal was also a fan of Paul Greenberg, Tucker's first mentor at the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, since he quoted him in an article he published in the Washington Examiner, November 1, 2004, entitled The 9/11 Connection. In the article, he quotes Paul as saying, "Everything we had thought, assumed, expected in the golden 90s hadn't been so. The surface piece of the 1990s had been bought at a great price. On 9/11, a failure of American leadership was revealed, a failure to look ahead and act forcefully to forestall threats, to do what Bush has called, quote, the hard work of fighting terror and spreading freedom." William's father, Irving, alleged CIA employee, also only had kind words to say about Mr. Greenberg when he wrote the foreword to his 1991 book, Resonant Lives, 50 Figures of Consequence. He said, and I quote, "Our intellectual and spiritual elites today are, with some notable exemptions, semi-educated at best. This explains why someone like Mr. Greenberg has not received the recognition he deserves. Oh yes, he has won a Pulitzer Prize and other awards, which is nice, but these are tributes to his journalistic talents as a columnist and editorial writer. As a master of the brief, moral essay, he has yet to come into his own. These men all seem to connect to one another in some way, and they all seemingly support the, quote, alleged war on terror while increasing the size of the government in the name of preserving freedom. They protect Israel and promote their agenda while scapegoating Muslims for false flag attacks meant to justify giving more power to their think tanks and intelligence agencies, which answer to nobody except the people lining their pockets." After leaving the Weekly Standard, Tucker then went on to write for New York Magazine, Reader's Digest, Slate, Esquire, The New Republic, The New York Times, The Daily Beast, and The Wall Street Journal. He would also go to work on camera for CNN, PBS, and MSNBC before finally settling into his role at Fox News as the poster boy for conservative values. During those years, he also somehow found time to appear on shows like King of Queens, 30 Rock, and Dancing with the Stars. While he is now on Fox News as arguably their most popular personality, this wasn't his first tango with News Corporation, which owns Fox News. News Corporation, owned by Rupert Murdoch, also owned the Weekly Standard, where Tucker worked under Bill Kristol. News Corporation headquarters is located in none other than the Rockefeller Center complex in New York. Rupert Murdoch is also on the board of Genie Energy, an American energy company located out of New Jersey. Other noteworthy people on the board of Genie Energy include Jacob Rothschild, the head of the Rothschild banking dynasty, and James Woolsey, former director of the CIA, who, if you remember earlier, was also on the UN Reform Task Force in 2005 with Heritage Foundation founder Edwin Fuellner, whose goal was to create a more effective United Nations. The same United Nations which resides on land donated by John D. Rockefeller. In a 2015 article written by Charlie Rose in Vanity Fair, he details a merger between Jacob Rothschild and David Rockefeller. Rothschild bought 37% of shares in Rockefeller Financial Services through his RIT Capital Partners. This is the same Charlie Rose who would have Arkansas columnist Paul Greenberg on a show to talk politics, and the same Paul Greenberg who was held in such high regard by William Crystal and his father Irving. There are so many overlapping connections that can be made that I probably missed dozens, if not more, during my research into the topic. Given these connections to the CIA, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, etc., it's no wonder Tucker Carlson ridicules people who believe that 9/11 was an inside job and calls these people parasites. It's also no wonder Tucker Carlson won't seriously address the Rothschilds on his show, as his boss probably wouldn't be too happy, even though they have so much control and influence. Whenever people bring up legitimate issues, it's his job to mock them, so his viewers won't get to the truth of the matter.
Washington, D.C. experienced a mild snowfall last week. Luckily, City Councilman Trayon White was on it. He knows why it happened. Watch this.
It just started snowing out of nowhere this morning, man. Y'all better pay attention to this climate control, man. This climate manipulation. And D.C. keep talking about we're a resilient city. And that's a model based off the Rothschilds controlling the climate to create natural disasters they can pay for it and own the cities, man. Be careful.
the Rothschilds control the climate. The Rothschilds, of course, are a wealthy Jewish banking clan. They're included in a great many conspiracy theories, but those theories rarely give them credit for the weather. That's an ambitious new twist. Mark Stein is an author and columnist and a part-time meteorologist, and he joins us tonight. What do you make of it? So this is, by the way, I live here, so you can laugh all you want, but that's actually my city councilman speaking there. The Rothschilds control the weather. Did you know that?
I did actually, Tucker. They bought the weather from God back in 1929 when he had a bit of a liquidity problem after the Wall Street crash. And they keep it in the wine cellars at the Chateau Mouton Rothschild estate in France. And they're able to micro-target the climate. For example, it was light snow in your part of Washington, but I gather in the stairwell of Trayon White's apartment building, he actually had an avalanche just on his floor. That's how micro-targeted the big Jew weather machine is able to be. And by the way, you may think it's a light snowfall, but if you actually examine it, it's actually small pieces of gefilte fish, which is why it doesn't melt. And that's why the Jews control the snowplow business. So they scoop all the gefilte fish in Washington away, and they use it to make Louis Farrakhan Calypso albums, which they put out to discredit Louis Farrakhan from telling the truth about the Synagogue of Satan. It all makes sense.
See, the funny thing is, I don't know if it's funny, it's actually so appalling and shocking that it's hard to, I'm just going to laugh about it. That was you made me feel better about a city out of control. So then I want to run this by you. Maybe you can make me feel better about this too. There's a new uproar on social media over microaggressions at UC Santa Cruz. The school has assembled a list of microaggressions.
Tucker Carlson seems to be everywhere. He has become the face of the conservative and right-wing movement in the United States, surely due to the incredible amount of connections he has to intelligence agencies and the government. This is why the gatekeepers in the media attempt to give him credibility and publish stories like how he's being spied on by the NSA, or how a seemingly random man confronted him in Montana at a fly fishing shop and insulted him trying to start a confrontation, and it turns out that the man was actually an employee of the Asia Foundation, which was created in 1951 by the CIA as a front organization to distribute propaganda. If you had any doubts before watching this that Tucker Carlson was controlled opposition, I hope the research I presented will put that to bed. Mainstream media is all controlled, and it's one big incestuous pit. Don't worship these people as heroes because they will sell you down the river in a heartbeat. Is Tucker Carlson CIA? Well, you can't prove that directly, but once you pour through all of his connections, you would find it incredibly hard not to believe that is the case. About the only thing we're missing at this point is official government documents detailing as much, which I am sure will come out at some point in the future. The CIA has a very long and documented history of infiltrating and controlling the media. Operation Mockingbird is a great example of that. Tucker Carlson is just one of many examples you could make. Remember to always do your own research and turn off the television.
Hey, good to see you after we met briefly at the event in 2008 in Minneapolis for Ron Paul.
Oh, that was fun. I remember that.
But you had to leave early. What happened?
The truther stuff in pure. I'll tell you why. I didn't bail on Ron Paul. It's when Jesse Ventura got up and started saying 9/11 was an inside job.
He didn't say that.
Yeah, he did say that.
No, he said that it was curious why the FBI,
Come on.
had Bin Laden on.
Look, I'm the I got it. I was there, and but.
So you had to leave because that one.
I was enraged. I was enraged by it. It wasn't controversial. It was stupid. Let me answer your question.
Sure.
It wasn't controversial. It was stupid. And if there's any evidence that the government was behind 9/11, look, I believe anything if there's evidence, but there isn't any. So knock it off. That's my view.
Okay, but
and I said that to him.
Sure, but one stupid person says something stupid at a Ron Paul event.
I hate that. And by the way, I am open to almost any crackpot theory about anything. It's just on that subject. Come on, you know what I mean? That's too much. That even for me.
So, just out of curiosity, then, what's your take on Building 7? Which explanation do you believe?
Come on.
No, that's a serious question. Which explanation did it?
Which explanation? I
there's
believe...
two explanations. It was pulled, or it was isolated pockets of fire in the building, that were sort of
let me
the towers coming down. That brought it down.
This is a no-win conversation, so I'm not going to continue it. But let me just say one thing: my macro view is the obvious one, which is the buildings came down because a bunch of nutcases flew a plane into them.
Okay, so are you still supporting Ron Paul? So, are you supporting anybody in the race this year?
No, I don't support. I don't even
You're
vote.
an objective
I don't
journalist?
even vote. I'm hardly objective. I'm honest. I'm not objective.
Certainly not afraid to speak your mind.
No, I'm not. No, you can assess my views. They're very clear.
Do you have any
but I
message?
hate that 9/11 crap. Wish they just kick those people out. I mean,
it's supposed to be the 93rd floor.
Really?
It's important for people whose families still involved to know the truth, whether or not the government was involved or whether it was terrorists. But there's a history of government-sponsored terror throughout the past century.
Exactly.
So what do you mean kick them out?
I don't know. Whatever.
Anybody who's a 9/11 truther should be kicked out of the country?
Of course not. I don't even believe in parking tickets. I mean, please. I just don't. I think that people, before saying something that heavy, ought to present real evidence and not just it's a coincidence or questions remain and dumb things like that.
Steel doesn't weaken until 2,400 degrees. It's evidence that jet fuel couldn't cause a collapse of the tower from being hit near the top.
Except the thing is, it did. So that's the problem.
Steel doesn't melt until 2,400 degrees. It didn't.
I go back to our interventionalist policies way back when we first funded Al Qaeda. Back when they were fighting the Soviets. We gave them a lot of money. The CIA pretty much trained them. I mean that's pretty much enough evidence for me.
That the government brought down the Twin Towers?
You know what, the government was involved in bringing that into our, because they would not be trained. Because who trained them? The government trained them. The CIA trained them. Special ops trained them.
All right, I've had this debate so many times. It's not, I don't know. It seems to me that it's kind of beneath like adult discourse even, really, I guess. And it definitely discredits otherwise good ideas.
I just think that the implications, if the government was involved, the implications are so vast that it should be looked into whether or not it seems ridiculous.
So for family members of the victims that are asking questions and want the evidence that's been withheld by the government released, you would say that they're less than adults somehow for wanting that
I would say that parasites like you make it much worse for them. That's what I would say.
I'm a parasite now?
Yeah, it's filthy to say things like that with no evidence, and you have none, so you should stop. That's my view. Welcome back. Millions of people watched the horror of 9/11 right before their very eyes, live on television. 2 planes crashing into the World Trade Center, and less than a couple of hours later, both towers, of course, collapsing. My next guest says that hijackers may not have brought down the towers by themselves. Here to explain his controversial theory, Stephen Jones. He's a professor of physics at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah. Professor Jones, thanks for coming on.
Sure, thanks, Tucker.
Well, just sum up this, obviously, your theory, just the one sentence that I just explained in the intro, contradicts what we all think we know about how these towers collapsed. Quickly sum up your explanation for what happened.
Well, I'd like to start with this paper that you referred to. It's available online. What I'm doing, Tucker, is presenting evidence but it's a hypothesis to be tested. That's a big difference from a conclusion. And so I just wanted to clarify that. But to sum up, I've looked at the official reports by FEMA and so on regarding the collapse of these buildings.
Right.
I'd like to look at the collapse of Building 7 in just a minute. It was not even hit by a jet, so we should look at that.
The 2 towers, the explanation has been that the fire inside was so intense that it weakened the structural steel and that each floor collapsed down upon the next in a pancake fashion, and they imploded in on themselves. Is that essentially, I think, what people think?
Yeah, that's basically it, yeah. And so what I've done is to analyze these reports. But I would like to do a little experiment with you, Tucker, if I could. I sent out a video clip of the collapse of Building 7, because most people haven't actually seen that one, and that's the crux of the argument that I'm presenting.
Okay, sum up very quickly the argument for us. You believe there were explosives in the buildings planted by someone, detonated.
Well, yeah.
Is that correct?
In other words, the The hypothesis to be tested is, there's two hypotheses here. One is fire and damage caused all three buildings to collapse.
Okay.
The other is that explosives in the buildings may have caused the collapse. And so then we analyze and see which fits the data better. And I've done that in my 25-page paper.
I want to read you a quote from the Deseret Morning News, a paper in Utah from you. I'm quoting now. It is quite plausible that explosives were pre-planted in all three buildings and set off after the two plane crashes, which were actually a diversion tactic. Muslims are probably not to blame for bringing down the World Trade Center buildings after all. That's, I would think, pretty offensive to a lot of people listening. Do you have any evidence for that? I mean,
well, not to the Muslims, I might say.
Well, that's a good.
I've had a lot of emails.
I'm sure your writings have been greeted with glee in Islamabad and Peshawar and places like that. But for Americans,
well, I haven't received any notes from there, but just good people. I have Muslim friends. Let me read, for example, but I'm not going to let you off the hook. I really want to do this experiment with you.
Well, we don't have a lot of time for experiments, Professor, but if you could just give us one thing to hold on to. How you make these claims or appear to make these claims. Do you have any evidence that there were bombs in the building?
Sure. Let's start with the collapse of Building 7. Can you roll the video clip that I sent to you?
Okay, I'm not sure if we can, but to specify, that is World Trade Center building number 7, smaller than the other two, was not hit by a plane, of course, yet it collapsed.
Right, it's 47 stories.
That's right.
24 steel columns in the center.
Right.
Trusses asymmetrically supported. Now, I can't see what you're seeing, so
we just
see
the building. And just so our viewers know, the explanation that I think is conventional is that there was a large tank of diesel fuel stored in the lower level of that, which caught fire, and the resulting fire collapsed the building.
Well, that's basically it, but as we read in the FEMA report, it says here, and I put this in my paper, of course, the best hypothesis, which is the only one they looked at, fire, has only a low probability of occurrence. Further investigation, analyses are needed to resolve this issue, and I agree with that.
Okay.
But they admit there's only a low probability. And if you look at the collapse, you see what I've studied is the fall time, the symmetry, the fact that it first dips in the middle, that's called the kink, which is very characteristic, of course, of controlled demolition.
Professor, I am sorry that we are out of time, and I'm not sure that
one other thing I want to mention about...
Okay, if you can hit it with it quickly.
All right. Okay, here we go. Molten metal in the basements of all three buildings.
Right.
And yet all scientists now reasonably agree that the fires were not sufficiently hot to melt the steel. So what is this molten metal? It's a direct evidence for the use of high-temperature explosives such as thermite. Thermite produces molten iron as an end product.
Okay.
So we do have... it's a very short time, but people will read the paper, then I talk about the molten metal, the symmetry of the collapse, and the weaknesses and inadequacies of the fire hypothesis.
Professor, we're going to have to leave it to our viewers who are interested enough to follow up to do just that. We appreciate your coming on, even if I don't understand your theories. We appreciate you trying to explain them. Thanks.
Okay.
The Jews are what the New Testament of the Bible calls the synagogue of Satan, is conquering the world and ushering in the New World Order. The people wearing the Kabbalah string are non-Jews helping the Jews bring in the New World Order. The red string is a symbol to show the Jews that they are helping the Jews usher in the New World Order. The reason they do it is so that the Jews spare them from the mass depopulation that is happening. Not many people are allowed to live in the New World Order. In the Old Testament, the book of Joshua, God was giving the Israelites the land of Canaan. Joshua sent in spies. The Canaanites found out and were searching for the spies. The spies got help from a harlot called Rahab. The Canaanites went to Rahab's house, and she told them she did not see anyone. When they left, Rahab the harlot made
Nicholas, estou sabendo destas coisas e mantenho a minha amizade normal com meus familiares, com os meus colegas de trabalho, com os meus amigos de infância, com os meus pais, com os meus tios, avós, enfim. Tem algum problema nisso? Não. Quando você se tem uma amizade com uma pessoa, ao ponto de você ser um famoso e a pessoa mais ainda, e você conseguir contato com aquela pessoa, é porque ela conhece no mínimo o seu trabalho, ela gosta do seu trabalho, ela admira o seu trabalho e ela tem pelo menos um mínimo de confiança em você, de que você não vai manipular o que ela fala. Agora, sabendo ainda mais, depois desse último vídeo que você viu de quase 35 minutos, você está percebendo que ele já não é uma pessoa tão boa assim. Um jornalista que os jornalistas BR deveriam ter ele como espelho, como alguns alienados daqui da internet escrevem sobre esse cara. O problema é que você, mesmo sendo muito famoso e falando as mesmas coisas que a gente fala, nunca que conseguiríamos, e se conseguíssemos, não deixariam a gente conversar com essas oposições controladas no público, ao vivo, ou editado. Porque eles sabem quem você é. Agora, se você é amiguinho do sistema, se você abaixa a cabeça para o mesmo sistema, se você também faz o jogo de oposição controlada fingindo antagonismo a alguma coisa, é claro, vai abrir a porta para você de vários mentirosos, hipócritas, sanguinários, safados, religiosos e opositores controlados pelo próprio sistema. Aqueles que se dizem lutar contra o sistema são controlados por eles, a maioria. Então, é claro, eles vão dar esse presente a você, e aqueles que já confiavam numa figura criada pelo sistema já velha, também passa a confiar ainda mais em você. No caso que eu estou dando exemplo, Tucker Carlson. Então você vai ver uma seleção rápida de fotos e vídeos de pessoas bem conhecidas aqui no Brasil que são oposições controladas. E é claro que ele tem fácil acesso a esse pessoal, afinal, eles são controlados pelo mesmo senhor.
It's debate night, but we're not in Milwaukee.
But it doesn't make sense to do them. So I've taken a piss, as you probably noticed.
I did. I'm grateful you did. It's interesting though, because you spent a lot of your career in television.
All the truthers, thinking Tucker's the man, eh? Yeah, he's exposing it. He's gonna stop it. Go to BitChute, type in Tucker Carlson exposed as controlled opposition, and watch that video, okay? And then snap out of it. Snap out of it. What do you gotta do to break the spell? Break the fucking magic spell, okay? They ping pong you. It's a game. It's a ploy. It's a rouse. It's a drama. It's a story. It's fiction. It's fiction. Okay? They're all fucking in it. They're all part of it. They all suck each other off. You don't know what you're fucking doing. I don't know whether I should give up. Do I need to try harder? What do I need to do to snap you fucking out of it? Tucker is the man. He said it's so important. Sheep, still aren't getting it. Still aren't figuring it out. It's never going to change. He's changing nothing. Oh, but he says true things. That's how controlled opposition works. The Pied Piper has got his little whistle. So do whatever you have to do to take the fucking blinders off your eyes. Okay? Go watch the video and study his background, and then study his incredible no breaking eye contact, no blink, frickin' MK Ultra, whatever the hell's going on, programmed. He's probably got chips already all fucking in him. Who knows? They're just sending it directly to his mouth, the information. So highly trained CIA agent. I don't know. I'm just going to do homesteading and hope that we just don't get all drone bombed. Because that's where it's heading. Because nobody's doing nothing. Everybody just thinks there's some kind of hero out there is going to, I don't know, like Putin's going to do it too. You know, the dictator that's been running his friggin' country and bombing the shit out of whatever. Doesn't matter if he's got nice traits. There's all kinds of people who have nice personality traits that are also narcissists, okay? Like, the black and white thinking is still happening. It's so frustrating to watch. And this is like a lot of people who are seeing through the UN agenda. And they give you your puppets, they give you your false heroes, you don't think they're controlling the other side of it? Oh my God. Do you really think that he would have a platform? Do you know when I tried to put that piece of information into Facebook, it said I couldn't share it? Do you know that if you try to, go try to download this and see if you get the error of downloading. They don't want you to know their little precious MK Ultra CIA agent is a con, is fooling you, is drawing you in with all this is a bit of truth. Wow, that's an incredible, wow. Do you mean that drug is bad for you and vaccines are bad for you? Wow. Yeah, we all been saying that. You could have paid attention to any of us. But no, you're all celebrity brainwashed. It's got to be celebrity for you, to have any kind of sense of it. It's fucked up. Okay? I don't know what to say anymore, but for those of you who maybe are like, I'm tired of this rat race, and you want to know who not to fucking pay attention to anymore because they're manipulating you, then the sea is open of knowledge for you. You just have to undo the programming, okay? It's a ping for your pong. This is a black and white, play both sides, left and right, conservative, liberal. It's the same. It's one coin, two sides, and y'all still don't know it. Oh, okay? One day, I will pray. I will do more praying. Maybe that's what I have to do. Maybe it has to just be an energy thing that you all freaking snap out of it. I don't know. Lord help us.
Tucker Carlson comenta que o atual presidente Jair Bolsonaro foi derrotado por uma pequena margem de votos por seu oponente de extrema esquerda e criminoso condenado, Lula da Silva. Há dúvidas sobre essa eleição. Alguns dizem que nem todos os votos foram contados. Carlson lançou uma acusação contra o YouTube, dizendo que questionar o resultado das eleições não é mais permitido no Brasil. E tampouco nos Estados Unidos. O YouTube acaba de anunciar que censurará qualquer publicação que levante dúvidas sobre o resultado das eleições. Ele também informou em seu programa que o diretor da CIA, William Joseph Barnes, do governo de Biden, teria chegado ao Brasil antes das eleições para pressionar o presidente Jair Bolsonaro a aceitar o resultado das eleições. E da mesma forma, falou que é provável que os Estados Unidos enviem o assessor de segurança nacional norte-americano para garantir que o Brasil tenha uma transição. Eles sempre fazem exatamente o que os acusam de fazer. Isso é infalivelmente verdade. Assim, o mesmo governo que se queixa de forma constante da santidade da democracia e das eleições livres e justas, vem se intrometendo nas eleições de outros países. Neste caso, concretamente nas do Brasil, há mais de um ano. Carlson alerta que não estamos especulando sobre isso. A CIA pressionou pessoalmente o gabinete de Jair Bolsonaro, o ex-presidente, ou ainda tecnicamente, o presidente do Brasil, para que aceitasse os resultados das eleições muito antes de estas acontecerem. Ele não tem obrigação de aceitar os resultados de uma eleição injusta. De fato, se ele acredita na democracia, não deveria. De igual maneira, o ativista norte-americano, Mike Adams, faz um alerta em relação aos resultados eleitorais no Brasil. Que se o presidente Biden diz que tudo foi perfeitamente limpo na eleição do comunista de esquerda Lula da Silva, então podemos afirmar que um monte de ladrões dirigiu este resultado. Que houve manipulação dos resultados. Que os globalistas estavam envolvidos, e que o Departamento de Estado também estava envolvido. Além disso, Facebook e Instagram começaram a eliminar postagens com pedidos de intervenção militar no Brasil. Em um artigo publicado no site Valor Econômico Globo, o presidente do Tribunal Superior Eleitoral, TSE, Alexandre de Moraes, disse que as pessoas que não aceitarem os resultados eleitorais serão tratadas como criminosos e prestarão contas. Ademais, Moraes pediu a Lula que regulamente as redes sociais, com um projeto de lei que regularize essas mídias. O que inevitavelmente levará à censura e ao controle total para o povo brasileiro.
The truther stuff and fear. I'll tell you why. I didn't bail on Ron Paul. It's when Jesse Ventura got up and started saying 9/11 was an inside job.
He didn't say that.
Yeah, he did say that.
No, he said that it was curious why the FBI, had Bin Laden on.
Look, I'm the I got it. I was there, and but.
So you had to leave because that one.
I was enraged. I was enraged by it. It wasn't controversial. It was still. Let me answer your question.
Sure.
It wasn't controversial. It was stupid. And if there's any evidence that the government was behind 9/11, look, I believe anything if there's evidence, but there isn't any. So knock it off. That's my view.
Okay, but
and I said that to him.
Sure, but one stupid person says something stupid at a Ron Paul event.
I hate that. And by the way, I am open to almost any crackpot theory about anything. It's just on that subject. Come on, you know what I mean? That's too much. That even for me.
So just out of curiosity, then, what's your take on Building 7? Which explanation do you believe?
Come on.
No, that's a serious question. Which explanation did it?
Which explanation?
There's two explanations. It was either it was pulled or it was isolated pockets of fire in the building that were sort of. The two towers coming down. That brought it down.
This is a no-win conversation, so I'm not going to continue it. But let me just say one thing: my macro view is the obvious one, which is the buildings came down because a bunch of nutcases flew a plane into them.
Okay, so are you still supporting Ron Paul? So, are you supporting anybody in the race this year?
No, I don't support. I mean, I don't even
You're
vote.
An objective
someone.
journalist?
I don't even vote. I'm hardly objective. I'm honest. I'm not objective.
There you go. Certainly not afraid to speak your mind.
No, I'm not. No, you can assess my views. They're very clear.
Do you have any?
But I hate that 9/11 crap. Wish they just kick those people out. I mean,
it was supposed to be on the 93rd floor.
Really?
It's important for people whose families still involved to know the truth, whether or not the government was involved or whether it was terrorists, but there's a history of government-sponsored terror throughout the past century.
Exactly.
So what do you mean kick them out?
I don't know, whatever.
Anybody who's a 9/11 truther should be kicked out of the country?
Of course not. I don't even believe in parking tickets. I mean, please. I just don't. I think that people, before saying something that heavy, ought to present real evidence and not just, it's a coincidence or questions remain, a dumb
I think the fact that steel doesn't weaken until 2,400 degrees is evidence that jet fuel couldn't cause a collapse of the tower from being hit near the top.
Except the thing is, it did. So that's the problem.
Steel doesn't melt until 2,400 degrees. It didn't.
I go back to our interventionist policies way back when we first funded Al Qaeda. Back 1978. Back when they were fighting the Soviets. We gave them a lot of money. The CIA pretty much trained them. I mean that's pretty much enough evidence for me.
That the government brought down the Twin Towers?
You know what, the government was involved in bringing that into our, because they would not be trained. Because who trained them? The government trained them. The CIA trained them. Special ops trained them.
All right, I've had this debate so many times. It's not, I don't know. It seems to me that it's kind of beneath like adult discourse, even, really, I guess, and it definitely discredits otherwise good ideas.
I just think that the implications, if the government was involved, the implications are so vast that it should be looked into whether or not it seems ridiculous.
So for family members of the victims that are asking questions and want the evidence that's been withheld by the government released, you would say that they're less than adults somehow for wanting that
I would say that parasites like you make it much worse for them. That's what I would say.
I'm a parasite now?
Yeah, it's filthy to say things like that with no evidence, and you have none, so you should stop. That's my view.
Just a month later, Kristen Clark invited the noted Trinidadian anti-Semite, Tony Martin, to speak on campus. Martin, then a professor at Wellesley College, was the author of a self-published manifesto called The Jewish Onslaught. In it, Martin chronicled the, quote, escalating Jewish onslaught against black people. Now, for Martin's fans, like Kristen Clark, Martin's speech at Harvard did not disappoint. He attacked both Jews and Judaism as a religion. Tony Martin spent his final years giving speeches to Holocaust denial organizations on topics such as, quote, tactics of organized Jewry in suppressing free speech, end quote. Kristen Clark strongly approved of Tony Martin, and we're not speculating, because as she told the Crimson after his speech, quote, Professor Martin is an intelligent, well-versed black intellectual who bases his information on indisputable fact. So again, directly from Kristen Clark, Tony Martin's anti-Semitism was based on, quote, indisputable fact. Kristen Clark has never shed these views. They've simply become more sophisticated. Just last year, as a lawyer, Clark was fighting for the crudest kind of racial discrimination in college admissions. This fall, she said it was, quote, madness for the federal government to take the side of Asian applicants who had provably been denied college admission purely because of their skin color. But tough luck. As far as Kristen Clark was concerned, those Asians didn't have enough melanin, and melanin is the key. Speaking of madness, in a sane country, someone like Kristen Clark would be under investigation by the Civil Rights Division, not running it. How crazy have we become? Well, we will see if Clark's nomination gets to the U.S. Senate. And if it does, we're in serious trouble.
Obrigado a você que assistiu a mais este documentário. Obrigado por acompanhar o canal desde então. Obrigado por ter assistido, mesmo que o seu tempo seja limitado, mesmo que tenha as coisas do dia a dia, enfim. Obrigado por estar aqui e espero que você, que tem um mínimo de consciência, possa alertar o seu próximo sobre isso. Eu não peço nunca para curtir, comentar nem compartilhar. O que eu quero que você faça, na maioria das vezes, se puder, é extrair as informações boas e que podem ser provadas e passar para o seu próximo que acha que pessoas desse tipo, esses personagens americanos, e que existem alguns brasileiros que copiam esta coisa nojenta de fora, possa entender o que é o conceito de oposição controlada, que já foi explicado no canal, e quais são alguns exemplos no Brasil e afora, e quais são as provas que se podem encontrar deste pessoal. Você já viu sobre Alex Jones, David Eichel, Julian Assange, e agora está vendo sobre Tucker Carlson. Mas tem muitos. Se fosse para eu contar cada um e fazer cada documentário, eu podia passar o resto desse ano de 2024 fazendo só esses documentários a respeito desse pessoal. Mas tem muitos que você pode procurar. Aqui na internet, os que falam de teorias da conspiração, podemos começar pelo Tio Lu. A Carol Capel também é uma delas, que de vez em quando dá um pitaco sobre esses assuntos. Tem também a patota desses lá de fora, americanos, que eu já fiz documentário, o Alex Jones, o David Eichel, esse pessoalzinho. Tem os canais da Terra Plana, os mais famosos, o canal Sem Hipocrisia, que também é um hipócrita, quem diria, né? Então tem vários outros que eu já escrevi e que nem dá para colocar num vídeo só, que você pode ir atrás e facilmente constatar que eles são peões do sistema. Bolsonaro, Donald Trump, Putin, esses são oposições controladas dentro da política. Existem também dentro da religião, que fingem falso antagonismo, sendo que o Deus dele é o mesmo, é o dinheiro. Então, é só você buscar, não precisa eu ficar trazendo aqui, que você saberá tudo isso e um pouco mais. Eu não sei quanto eu vou fazer de documentário sobre essas oposições controladas. Talvez eu faça mais uns 2 ou 3 de alguns personagens mais conhecidos, para você entender. E eu não toco muito aqui dos brasileiros, porque é muito mais fácil de encontrar do que esses americanos importados para cá. Ainda tem que traduzir, muita gente ainda não sabe inglês, como eu sei um pouco, então dá para legendar, corrigir, legenda, procurar, ver se aquilo é real, ler alguns documentos, enfim, artigos. Então fica um pouco mais fácil. Mas os brasileiros, como eu citei, é mais fácil de você achar. É mais fácil de você verificar. É mais fácil de você ver o que eles falam e o que está escrito nas escrituras. Ou o que eles falam e o que é na realidade. Então, não precisa eu ficar mostrando aqui. Tá certo? Mas se uma legião de cambada de bobos, de aliados continuar, aí sim eu vou ser obrigado a trazer. Mas enquanto isso, eu vou trazendo dessas figuras criadas pelo sistema americanos, para que você entenda o modus operandi deles, o que eles falam ou deixam de falar, o que eles são, no que eles são hipócritas e afins, e você pode tirar a sua própria conclusão de continuar confiando nestes marionetes ou não. E trazendo estas coisas, essas provas e os modus operandi, você consegue constatar facilmente dentro da política, dentro da internet, dentro da religião e afim, o que é verdadeiro e o que é real e o que é mentiroso dentro da esfera do cenário que é o mundo. E não seja enganado, porque o que mais há no cenário são oposições controladas para mentir para você e te jogar pro abismo. Que Deus continue te abençoando.
Alex Jones is the single most censored man in all American history. Deplatformed. Alex Jones was deplatformed before it was a common term. He joins us now in our studio.
I see you, enemy! You are my enemy! He is your enemy! I see you, enemy!
So we thought it'd be interesting to start with a series of on-tape predictions that you made, some of which are so precise and so prescient that makes the hair on my arm stand up.
This guy, the spirit, this smiling, leering devil that thinks you can't see what he is. I see you, enemy! 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 You are my enemy! He is your enemy! And I swear total resistance to you with everything I've got. You think I don't see you, Skelter? I see you, you understand me? I know what you think of me and my family. I see you right back. You understand that? You understand that's Delta. I see you, enemy. You are my enemy. He is your enemy. I see you, enemy.
So people say, well, why is he so angry? Well, it's because he's literally trying to take us off air, literally taking our sponsors. I see you, I know what you're doing. So I'm pissed off about it. And so there he is, all sweet, liberal, and cackling and laughing. But he's really an agent of anti-American totalitarianism. So he was the front man of that, and I wanted to just simply say, you're right.
This uncircumcised Philistine, who does he think he is? Nick, I don't see you. Delta, I see you. You understand me? I know what you think of me and my family. I see you right back. You understand that? You understand that's Delta. I see you, enemy. You are my enemy. He is your enemy. I see you, enemy.
What's interesting is, after dinner, you and my producer called Stelter. What was so interesting was he was very kind of syrupy sweet with you.
That's why I was sarcastic and told him I wanted to date him.
You did. In fact, the exact line that you had was, Brian, I'm not usually gay, but I want you. You've been very clear in a very direct, pretty masculine way, I would say, about how you feel about Brian Stelter. There's not a lot of confusion about your views on Stelter. And he seemed a little bit, I'm not saying he's open to it or whatever, but he wasn't shocked by it.
He's like, give me your phone number.
Nick, I don't see you. Stelter, I see you. You understand me? I know what you think of me and my family. I see you right back. You understand that? You understand that's Delta. I see you, enemy. You are my enemy. He is your enemy. I see you, enemy. You are